Park had waited 6 years for this moment. He had studied alien languages. He had learned diplomatic rules. He had practiced bowing and greeting in 17 different ways, but nothing had prepared him for what he saw when the ship came down from the sky. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like frozen water shaped into metal, with lights that glowed soft blue along its edges. It made no sound as it landed on the platform outside the United Nations building. Stood with the other officers, his heart beating fast in his chest. He was not an important person in this group. Ambassador stood at the front with the senior diplomats. They wore expensive suits and carried themselves with confidence. Stood near the back, holding a clipboard, wearing his simple military uniform. His job was to watch and take notes, nothing more. They had arrived in Earth's solar system 3 months ago. Their message had been simple. They wanted to talk about friendship between their people and humans. The whole world had gone crazy with excitement and fear. Were the aliens dangerous? Were they peaceful? What did they want? Now would finally see them with his own eyes. The door of the ship opened slowly. Cold air flowed out like fog rolling down a mountain. Then they stepped out and forgot to breathe. They were tall, so tall, nearly 8 feet with long limbs that moved like water. Their skin was silver blue, smooth like polished stone. They had 2 eyes, but the eyes were large and deep purple with no white parts at all. Their fingers were long and thin, with only 4 on each hand. When they walked, they seemed to float rather than step. There were 6 of them, but one stood out from the rest. She walked in the center, and the others stayed around her like guards. She was the most beautiful thing had ever seen. Her eyes were darker than the others, like the color of space itself. Patterns that looked like frozen lightning traced across her cheekbones, glowing faintly with their own light. Princess, the 3rd daughter of the Emperor, had memorized her file. She was 400 years old, which was young for her people. She was known for her sharp mind and her skill in negotiation. The Emperor had sent her as a sign that they took this meeting seriously. Ambassador stepped forward and began his greeting. He had practiced this speech for weeks. He bowed in the style, pressing his hands to his chest, and spoke words of welcome that had been carefully chosen by teams of experts. Watched, taking notes on his clipboard. Everything was going according to plan. Then Princess did something unexpected. She stopped listening to Ambassador. Her purple eyes moved away from him, scanning the crowd of humans behind him. Her gaze traveled over the senior diplomats, over the military officers, over the scientists and advisors. And then her eyes found. He felt it like a physical touch. Her stare was heavy, pressing against him. She tilted her head slightly, like a bird examining something curious. Then, without a word, she began walking toward him. The protocol officers panicked. This was not in the plan. Ambassador's speech trailed off into confused silence. The attendants exchanged alarmed looks but did not stop their princess. His feet felt frozen to the ground. His clipboard shook slightly in his hands. What was happening? Why was she coming to him? Had he done something wrong? Princess stopped right in front of him. Up close, she was even more overwhelming. She smelled like winter air and something electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. The cold coming off her body made goosebumps rise on his arms. "You," she said. Her voice was strange. It seemed to have many layers, like several people speaking the same word at slightly different times. It was beautiful and unsettling. "You carry an unusual energy signature," she continued. "I can feel it from here. It is remarkable. I wish to greet you in your human custom." Looked desperately at Ambassador. The older man's face was pale with shock, but after a moment he gave a tiny nod. Whatever the princess wanted, they could not refuse. "Of course, Your Highness," managed to say. His voice came out rough and nervous. "It is an honor." He extended his right hand, the way humans had greeted each other for centuries. Princess looked at his hand. She had seen humans shake hands in the videos her people had studied. She knew what to do. Slowly, gracefully, she reached out and took his hand in hers. Her skin was cold, so cold. It felt like grabbing ice, but smoother, like touching cold glass. Kept his face calm even as the cold bit into his fingers. Then something happened. The moment their skin fully touched, Princess went stiff. Her whole body locked up like a machine that had suddenly stopped. A violent shiver ran through her, starting from their joined hands and spreading outward. The glowing patterns on her face flickered wildly, flashing bright and dim in rapid pulses. Her attendants shouted words in their language. They rushed forward, their calm faces now filled with alarm. One of them reached for a weapon. Released her hand immediately. He stepped back, raising both palms to show he meant no harm. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break out of his chest. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to, I don't know what." Princess did not seem to hear him. She was staring at her own hand, the one that had touched his. Her fingers were trembling. The patterns on her face slowly returned to normal, but her expression was something could not understand. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something else entirely. Shock maybe, or wonder. The others surrounded their princess, speaking rapidly in their own language. Ambassador was calling for medical teams. The human diplomats were backing away, confused and frightened. But Princess ignored all of them. She raised her head and looked directly at. Her deep purple eyes seemed to look right through him, into some part of him he did not even know existed. "What?" she whispered, her layered voice barely audible. "Are you?" Had no answer. He did not understand the question. He was just a human, just a junior officer who had shaken hands with an alien princess. He did not know that this single moment would change everything. He did not know that the warmth of his ordinary human hand had just set fire to centuries of galactic history. All he knew was that the most powerful alien he had ever met was looking at him like he was the strangest thing she had ever seen. And he had absolutely no idea why. The diplomatic incident was contained, but only barely. Within 1 hour of the handshake, found himself sitting in a medical examination room deep inside the United Nations complex. Machines beeped around him. Sensors were attached to his chest, his arms, his head. Bright lights shone down on him as doctors rushed back and forth. Doctor was in charge of the examination. She was the lead xenobiology specialist assigned to the delegation, a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had spent her entire career preparing for the day when humans would meet aliens. Now that day had come, and it had immediately gone wrong. "Breathe in," she ordered, pressing a device against his chest. "Breathed in. Breathe out." He breathed out. Doctor frowned at her tablet, scrolling through pages of data. She had run every test available to modern medicine. Blood tests, brain scans, heart monitors, radiation checks, everything. "Your vitals are completely normal," she finally said. "Body temperature is 36.8 degrees Celsius. Heart rate is slightly elevated, but that is understandable given the circumstances. Everything else is within standard human ranges." Then why did she react like that? Asked. The question had been spinning in his head for the past hour. He could still feel the ghost of her cold fingers wrapped around his hand. Doctor hesitated. She set down her tablet and pulled up a chair to sit across from him. "What do you know about the?" she asked. "Not much, only what was in the basic briefing documents. It is a cold planet, very cold." Very cold is an understatement. Doctor pulled up an image on a nearby screen. It showed a planet covered in ice and snow, with pale blue oceans frozen solid at the surface. The average temperature on the is negative 40 degrees Celsius. In some regions, it drops to negative 70. Their entire biology has evolved to survive in extreme cold. Stared at the frozen world on the screen. It looked beautiful but deadly. "The body temperature runs around 12 degrees Celsius, Doctor continued. To put that in perspective, A human would be declared dead at that temperature. Our bodies need to stay around 37 degrees to function. Did the math in his head. His body was more than 20 degrees warmer than hers. So when I touched her, you were essentially a furnace to her, Doctor finished, like grabbing a hot pan without protection. But that does not explain everything, said slowly. You said other humans have touched before, the advanced team that came last month. Ambassador shook hands with their leader. Doctor nodded. You are right, that is what confuses me. They have had physical contact with humans before and none of them reacted the way Princess did. She did not just feel the heat, she seemed overwhelmed by it, almost paralyzed. Maybe there is something wrong with me. The tests say you are completely ordinary. Doctor shook her head. I have requested the medical readings from the... Whatever happened to their princess, their doctors recorded it. They are being surprisingly cooperative about sharing the data. Leaned back in his chair, exhausted. The events of the day felt unreal, like something from a strange dream. This morning, he had been a nobody, a junior officer whose most important job was carrying clipboards and taking notes. Now, he was at the center of a diplomatic crisis. What had he done wrong? Meanwhile, on the other side of the complex, Princess sat alone in her private chambers. The room was kept cold, the way she liked it. Machines pumped frigid air through the vents, maintaining a temperature that would give any human frostbite within minutes. Blue lights glowed softly from the walls, casting everything in cool shadows. Sat perfectly still in her chair, staring at her right hand. She could still feel it, the sensation of touching the human man. It had been unlike anything she had experienced in her 400 years of life. Heat, pure, overwhelming heat. It had rushed into her hand like water breaking through a dam. It had flooded up her arm, into her chest, into her head. Every nerve in her body had screamed at once, overloaded with a sensation they had never been designed to process. It had been almost painful, almost unbearable. And yet... The door opened behind her. Her chief attendant stepped inside. She was an older woman who had served family for 300 years. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed worry. Your Highness, said carefully, perhaps we should postpone further contact with the humans. You need time to recover from whatever happened today. No, his voice was firm. She did not look away from her hand. The negotiations will continue as planned. But Your Highness, your reaction to that human was extreme. The medical team is concerned. If touching them causes such a response, then perhaps... Bring me everything, interrupted. Every research file, every study, everything our scientists have learned about human biology. I want it all. Paused, confused. Your Highness. Finally looked up, was startled by what she saw in the princess's eyes. In all her years of service, she had never seen that expression before. Curiosity, genuine, burning curiosity. That human, said slowly, as if she was working through the thought as she spoke. When he touched me, I felt something I have never experienced. It was overwhelming. It was almost painful. She paused, flexing her fingers. And yet, she continued, I find myself wanting to understand it. I find myself wanting to feel it again. Said nothing. She did not know how to respond. His warmth, murmured, turning back to stare at her hand. It was like touching a star, like holding fire in my palm. She remembered the look on the human's face when she had pulled away. He had been scared, confused. He had not understood what had happened any more than she did. But he had not pulled away first. Even when she had begun to shake, even when her attendants had rushed forward in alarm, he had held on until she released him. There was something there, thought, something in that simple act that she needed to understand. Bring me the files, she said again. I need to learn everything about these humans. Yes, Your Highness, bowed and turned to leave. The attendant stopped. The human man, the one I touched, I want him included in all future meetings." His eyes widened. "Your Highness, he is only a junior officer. He has no authority in the human delegation. Requesting his presence would be highly unusual." "I do not care." His voice carried the weight of royal command. "Make the request. The humans want this alliance. They will agree." Bowed again and left the room. Alone once more, Princess closed her eyes and pressed her cold fingers against her chest. She could feel her heart beating, slow and steady, the way it always had. But something had changed. Something had awakened inside her that she did not have a name for. She needed to understand what that human had done to her. She needed to understand why, for the first time in centuries, she felt truly alive. The next 3 days were chaos hidden behind polite smiles. Ambassador paced back and forth in his office, his face red with frustration. His aides stood around him, none of them brave enough to speak. "They want what?" he demanded. "They want Lieutenant Park included in all negotiation sessions," his assistant repeated nervously. The request came directly from Princess. She was very clear about it. "He is a junior officer. He takes notes. He has no training in high-level diplomacy." "I understand, sir, but they were very insistent. They said it was a condition for continuing the talks." Ambassador stopped packing. He stared out the window at the city below, his jaw tight with anger. Humanity needed this alliance. They had technology that could solve problems humans had struggled with for centuries. Medical advances, clean energy, space travel capabilities that would take humans hundreds of years to develop on their own. They could not afford to offend the alien delegation over something as small as adding one person to the meeting room. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Tell Lieutenant Park to report to the main conference room tomorrow morning, and tell him to keep his mouth shut unless directly addressed." That was how Park found himself sitting at the most important negotiating table in human history, feeling completely out of place. The conference room was large and cold. The temperature had been lowered to make them more comfortable, which meant had to wear a thick jacket over his uniform. He sat at the far end of the table, away from the senior diplomats, trying to make himself as small as possible. Princess sat across the room with her delegation. She looked calm and composed, the perfect image of royal dignity, but noticed that her eyes kept moving toward him. Every few minutes, her gaze would drift away from whoever was speaking and find him. It made his skin prickle with unease. The negotiations themselves were not going well. They offered advanced medical technology, but with strict conditions. Humans could use it, but they could not study it. They could not modify it. They could not try to understand how it worked. "You are asking us to be dependent on you forever," Ambassador said, his voice tight with controlled frustration. "If we cannot learn from your technology, we can never grow beyond it." "Your species is young," one of the advisors replied. His voice was cold and dismissive. "In time, perhaps you will develop the capacity to understand our science. Until then, it is safer for everyone if access is limited." Watched the exchange silently. He could see what was happening. They did not see humans as equals. They saw them as children who needed to be managed and controlled. But then Princess spoke, and everything changed. "I disagree with my advisor," she said calmly. The room went silent. The delegation turned to stare at their princess in shock. This was not part of the planned discussion. "Your Highness," the advisor began, "I do not think. The humans have shown remarkable progress in their technological development," continued, ignoring him. 300 years ago, they had not yet discovered electricity. Now they travel to other planets in their own system. Their rate of advancement is unprecedented among the species we have encountered. She looked directly at Ambassador. Perhaps a more flexible arrangement could be reached. Limited access to the underlying principles of our technology with appropriate safeguards. This would allow humanity to learn while still protecting sensitive information. Ambassador's eyes widened. This was far better than anything he had hoped for. That would be very generous, Your Highness. The advisor looked furious, but he said nothing. He could not openly contradict his princess in front of the humans. During a break in the session, stood by the window looking out at the gray sky. His mind was racing. Why was Princess pushing for better terms for humanity? What had changed? Lieutenant Park. He turned to find one of the attendants standing behind him. The alien was tall and thin, with pale silver skin and nervous eyes. The princess wishes to speak with you, the attendant whispered. Privately, tonight after the session's end. There is a garden on the north side of the complex. She will meet you there. Before could respond, the attendant pressed a small chip into his hand and walked away. Stared at the chip. It was smooth and cool, made of some material he did not recognize. His heart began to beat faster. A private meeting with the alien princess. That was completely against protocol. If anyone found out, he could be removed from the delegation. He could face punishment for unauthorized contact. But he was also curious. The princess had shown special interest in him since the moment they met. She had touched his hand and been overwhelmed by something she could not explain. Now, she was changing the course of negotiations in ways that seemed designed to help humanity. There was a connection here, a mystery that needed to be solved. That night, after the sun had set and the complex had grown quiet, made his way to the garden. It was a strange place. Half of it was filled with earth plants, trees and flowers and grass kept warm by hidden heaters. The other half contained alien vegetation from the pale blue ferns that glowed softly in the darkness, twisted vines that seemed to move on their own, flowers made of what looked like crystal. Princess stood at the border between the two worlds, where earth grass met alien moss. The blue light from the plants cast soft shadows across her face. "You came," she said as approached. Was I supposed to refuse a princess? Something like a smile crossed her face. It was a strange expression on her alien features, but somehow it looked natural. "Most humans have been too afraid to speak to me directly," she said. "Even your ambassador hesitates before every word, but you are different. You speak to me like I am just another person." "You are a person," said simply. "A very important person from a very powerful civilization, but still a person." Studied him for a long moment. "Yes," she said slowly, "I think that is why I find you so interesting." She gestured, and suddenly the air between them filled with light. A holographic display appeared, floating in the darkness. It showed charts and diagrams and biological scans that did not understand. "I have spent the last 3 days studying your species," said. "What I have learned has forced me to reconsider everything I thought I knew about humanity." "What do you mean?" "When I touched you, Lieutenant Park, I felt something I have never experienced before. At first, I thought it was simply your body heat. Humans are much warmer than, but heat alone does not explain what happened to me." She pointed to one of the floating diagrams. It showed a comparison between human and biology. "Your species generates thermal energy constantly. Every cell in your body produces heat as it functions. Your metabolism burns fuel without stopping, every moment of every day, just to maintain your body temperature." She looked at him, and her purple eyes seemed to glow in the soft light. "To us this seemed wasteful, inefficient, but now I understand that I was looking at it wrong." "How should you look at it?" asked. "Like fire," said softly, "like a flame that never goes out, like carrying a star inside your chest." She stepped closer and felt the cold radiating off her body. It was like standing in front of an open freezer. "They have been watching your species for over a century," she continued. "We classified you as primitive, intelligent but limited. We thought we understood you." She paused, and something flickered in her expression. "We were wrong, and I need to tell you why. The garden was silent except for the soft hum of the alien plants. Blue light danced across the ground as stood before Princess, waiting for her to explain. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she turned to look at the plants behind her. The glowing ferns swayed gently, though there was no wind. "These plants are from Mai," she said quietly. "They have existed for millions of years unchanged. They do not adapt. They do not evolve. They simply exist, frozen in the same form they have always held." She turned back to, "My people are the same." Frowned, "I do not understand." Waved her hand, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed a map of the galaxy, filled with hundreds of glowing points. Each point was labeled with strange symbols. "The Empire spans 300 star systems," she said. "We have colonies on over 1,000 worlds. Our technology can reshape planets, cure diseases that would destroy entire species, and travel between stars in days instead of centuries." She paused, and something heavy entered her voice. "And we are dying." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Stared at her, not sure he had heard correctly. "Dying, but your empire, your technology." "Technology cannot save us from ourselves." Pulled up new images on the display, population charts, birth rates, death rates. All of them showed the same pattern, a slow, steady decline stretching back thousands of years. "Our species evolved on a frozen world," she explained. "Our biology is designed for conservation. We move slowly. We think carefully. We do not waste energy on unnecessary actions. This made us excellent survivors. We could endure conditions that would kill other species." She closed her hand, and the display flickered. "But it also made us static. We do not change, Lieutenant Park. We do not adapt. Our bodies, our minds, our society, everything stays the same, generation after generation." "That sounds stable," said carefully. "Stable?" Almost laughed. "Yes, that is one word for it. Another word is stagnant. Another word is dying." She began to pace slowly, her movements fluid and graceful even in distress. "The population has been declining for 6,000 years, not because of war, not because of disease. We simply stopped having children. Why bring new life into a universe we have already mapped completely? Why create new things when everything has already been created? Why change when everything is already perfect?" She stopped and faced directly. "We lost something essential, some spark that makes a species want to grow, to explore, to create. We became so focused on preserving what we had that we forgot how to build something new." Was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she had said. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy, rulers of hundreds of star systems, possessors of godlike technology, and they were slowly fading away. "Why are you telling me this?" he finally asked. Stepped closer. The cold coming off her body made Shiver, but he did not step back. "Because when I touched you, I felt something my people have not felt in thousands of years." She raised her hand, the same hand that had gripped his during their first meeting. "Your warmth was not just physical. When our skin touched, your energy flowed into me. I felt your heartbeat, fast and strong. I felt your blood pumping through your body. I felt every cell in your system burning with life." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "It was overwhelming. It was almost painful. But beneath the sensation of heat I felt something else, something deeper." "What?" Hope's purple eyes seemed to glow with inner light. "Hunger, desire, the burning need to grow, to change, to become something more than you are. It poured off you like radiation from a sun." She pressed her hand against her chest. Do not feel these things anymore. We are cold inside just as we are cold outside. But your entire species burns with a fire we cannot comprehend." Thought about what she was saying. He thought about human history, the wars and the discoveries, the terrible cruelties and the incredible kindnesses. He thought about how humans had gone from caves to cities to space in the blink of a cosmic eye. "We are not special," he said slowly. "We are just human. We get cold in winter. We get hungry when we do not eat. We want things we cannot have. We dream about things that do not exist." "Exactly," nodded. "You want, you hunger, you dream. These are things that have forgotten how to do." She turned back to the holographic display and pulled up another image. This one showed a comparison between human and bodies, with energy readings highlighted in different colors. A human body generates approximately 80 to 100 watts of thermal energy at rest. Your metabolism never stops working. Even when you sleep, your body burns fuel to keep you warm and alive. The diagram showed much lower numbers. Their bodies barely registered on the same scale. "We conserve energy so efficiently that we barely produce any waste heat. We thought this made us superior, more evolved, more advanced." She shook her head slowly. "We were fools. Your wasteful, inefficient, constantly burning metabolism is not a weakness. It is your greatest strength. It is the engine that drives your species forward." Looked at his own hands. They seemed so ordinary, just flesh and blood and bone, nothing special at all. "They did not come to Earth seeking geothermal technology," continued. "That was just the excuse we gave ourselves. We came here because we sensed something in your species that we had lost in ourselves." She reached out and took his hand. The cold was intense, like plunging his fingers into ice water. But this time did not flinch or shake. She held his hand firmly, her grip strong despite the discomfort she must have been feeling. "Fire," she said softly. "Life. The willingness to burn bright even if it means burning out faster." Could feel the heat flowing from his hand into hers. It was strange, knowing that something as simple as his body temperature could affect her so deeply. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Looked up at him, and for the first time he saw vulnerability in her alien features. "I want to learn how to feel alive again. I want my people to remember what it means to want something, to hope for something, to dream of something better." She squeezed his hand gently. "And I think you, not your technology, not your resources, but you, the fire that burns inside your species, might be the key." They stood there in the garden, hand in hand, cold and warmth meeting at the boundary between two worlds, and began to understand that this alliance was never about trading technology or resources. It was about something much more fundamental. It was about learning how to live again. The final negotiation session was held on a bright morning, 1 week after first contact. The conference room was packed with people from both species. Human diplomats and scientists filled one side of the table. Officials and advisors filled the other. Cameras recorded everything. The whole world was watching through screens and broadcasts. Park stood near the back of the human delegation, wearing his formal uniform. His heart was beating fast, but not from fear. He knew what was about to happen. Princess had told him everything during their meetings in the garden over the past few nights. Everything was about to change. Ambassador stood to deliver the opening statement, but before he could speak, Princess rose from her seat. The movement was smooth and graceful, but it carried the weight of royal authority. "I wish to address both delegations," she announced. The room went silent. The other looked surprised and confused. This was not part of the planned schedule. "The Empire approached this negotiation with certain assumptions about humanity," began. She walked slowly around the table as she spoke, her silver-blue skin catching the light. "We saw your species as young, primitive, and limited. We believed we were offering you a gift by sharing even a fraction of our technology." She paused in the center of the room, where everyone could see her. "We were wrong." Murmurs rippled through both delegations. The human diplomats exchanged confused glances. The advisors looked alarmed. "I have spent this past week learning about humanity," continued. not from your official reports or your carefully prepared presentations. I have learned by watching you, by speaking with you, by touching you." Her eyes found in the crowd. He gave her a small nod of encouragement. "Humans carry fire within them. This is not a metaphor. Your biology generates more thermal energy in a single day than it generates in a month. You heal from wounds that would kill us. You adapt to conditions that would destroy our colonies within years." She spread her arms wide, addressing both species. "But your greatest strength is not your heat or your resilience or your adaptability. It is something far more precious, something they have lost." The room was completely silent now. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. "You want," said simply. "You hunger, you dream. You look at the stars and feel the need to reach them. You face impossible obstacles and refuse to accept that they cannot be overcome." She turned to face her own delegation directly. "The Empire spans 300 star systems. We have technology beyond human imagination, and we are dying, not from war or disease, but from something worse. We have forgotten how to want anything. We have forgotten how to hope." The advisors were pale with shock. This was not information meant to be shared with outsiders. The princess was revealing secrets that had been kept hidden for thousands of years. "I came to Earth expecting to offer charity to a primitive species," said. "Instead, I found something I had not encountered in 400 years of life." She walked toward the human side of the room. "I found warmth, not just physical warmth, though that was overwhelming enough. I found emotional warmth, passion, desire, the burning determination to grow and change and become something more." She stopped in front of. The crowd parted around her, making space for this unexpected moment. "When I touched this human's hand, I felt more alive than I have ever felt before. His energy poured into me like fire, and for the first time in centuries, I remembered what it meant to want something." She turned to face Ambassador. "I propose a new alliance, not an exchange of technology for resources, a true partnership between equals." She outlined her plan. Human colonists would be sent to worlds, not as workers or servants, but as teachers. They would show them how to adapt to new environments, how to build new things, how to feel hope again. In return, scientists would come to Earth, not as observers or managers, but as students. They would learn from human energy and creativity. "We will explore the galaxy together," concluded. "Engineering combined with human passion, our cold precision and your burning fire. Together, we can go further than either species could alone." The room erupted in discussion. Some voices were excited, others worried. This was far beyond what anyone had expected from these negotiations. But Ambassador was smiling. He understood what was offering. It was not charity. It was not domination. It was the first step toward something genuinely new. "Your Highness," he said, "on behalf of humanity, I believe we can agree to these terms." The next hour was filled with formal speeches and official agreements. Documents were signed. Hands were shaken. History was made. But the moment remembered most came later, after the ceremonies were finished and the cameras had turned off. He found standing alone on the observation balcony, looking up at the night sky. Stars glittered above them, countless points of light scattered across the darkness. "You took a great risk today," he said, standing beside her. "Your own people seemed angry." "They were scared," corrected. "Scared of change, scared of admitting that we need help, but they will learn. Change is what we need most of all." She turned to look at him. The cold coming off her body was strong, but had grown used to it over the past week. "I have a confession to make," she said. "What?" "When I first touched your hand, I did not understand why I reacted so strongly. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought you had somehow attacked me with your heat." She reached out and took his hand again. The cold bit into his fingers, but he did not pull away. "Now I understand. There was nothing wrong. For the first time in centuries, everything was right. You woke something inside me that I had thought was dead forever. Looked down at their joined hands, his brown skin, her silver blue, warm and cold, fire and ice. Humanity's greatest strength is not our heat, he said. It is not our adaptability or our determination. It is something simpler than that. What? We hold on. He squeezed her cold fingers gently. Even when it hurts, even when it burns, when someone reaches out to us, we hold on. Was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, until her cold body was almost touching his warm one. Then I will hold on as well, she said softly, no matter how much your fire burns me. They stood together on the balcony, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, in the cold darkness of space, a new future was waiting. A future where fire and ice would work together, where warmth and cold would combine into something greater than either could be alone. 6 months later, Captain Park stood on the bridge of the first joint human exploration vessel, looking at a new star system filling the ship was called the Dawn's Fire. Half of its crew was human, half. They had learned to work together over the past months, adapting to each other's needs and strengths. The door behind him opened, bringing a gust of cold air. You should wear your thermal suit, Princess said, stepping to stand beside him. The ship's temperature is set for comfort. I run hot, replied with a smile. Remember. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. She had been learning human expressions, humor, joy, frustration. They did not come naturally to her, but she practiced every day. The colonization teams report success, she said. The settlements on Mars are thriving with human help, and the human researchers on our have already improved our agricultural yields significantly. Turns out we are good at making things grow. You are good at many things, paused. I have a question. Yes. When I first took your hand, you did not pull away even when I started shaking. Why? Thought about the question. He remembered that moment, the shock of her cold touch, the alarm of her attendants, the confusion in the room. I figured if you were brave enough to reach out, I could be brave enough to hold on. Was quiet for a long time. Then she reached out and took his hand again. The gesture had become familiar between them over the months, a bridge between two different worlds. Humanity's greatest strength, she said softly, is not your heat or your adaptability or your determination. It is your willingness to hold on, even when it burns. Squeezed her cold fingers gently. Maybe that is what makes us human. Outside the ship, the stars burned on distant fires in the endless dark, waiting to be reached by those brave enough to hold on.